Hello and welcome to the HealthShare Clinical Viewer new and next session at the 2021 Virtual Summit. So glad that you're able to join us. My name is Julie Smith. I am the Clinical Product Manager for the Clinical Viewer within HealthShare, also a nurse by training with many years in hospital operations, clinical informatics, as well as that product management space, bringing all of that together to focus in on the viewer and what you as our customers need to deliver. So today, what are we going to cover? We're going to cover where the clinical viewer sits within HealthShare today, the directions we're headed tomorrow, and making sure that you are able to understand the value we bring, the directions we're headed, and the support that we offer. And what is the clinical viewer at its heart? The clinical viewer is the part of HealthShare at the point of care where clinicians can deliver that care knowing they have that full aggregate record of a patient. Being able to pull all of the information from every different source to say, I understand what the person sitting in front of me needs because I have I can make informed decisions for that space. So what does that look like? You will see that over the last year, we have spent a lot of time thinking about a streamlined, unified experience. We also have expanded the use case support within the viewer itself, and we'll jump into some of those details. So when I think about that unified experience, we think about things like security and workflow. So you'll see that within the SSO OAuth piece of this presentation in the login application, but then you'll also see a number of component level changes within Clinical Viewer to meet use case needs. So as of the 21.2 release, the Clinical Viewer does require SSO and OAuth 2 adoption. You will see that whether or not that Clinical Viewer is framed within the navigation application or as a standalone application to ensure that we are delivering security to you. In addition, the historic old login applications that you may have been familiar with, whether using from UCR or your custom screens, have been replaced with a standard unified login application that supports the customizations required. On the screenshot, you are able to see that you can do things like reset your password, provide information about your tech help desk, as well as information about your network overall or any upcoming outages, and all of that will be customizable by you with configuration options. And as I mentioned before, if you attended last year, you know that the navigation application is the new replacement for the clinician portal and provides a frame for all HealthShare applications at the end user level. In this most recent release for 21.2, you will see additional configuration options provided, new customization available. We had already mentioned support third-party applications. We've expanded that to configuration for things like default applications at the default application at the end user level, as well as at the customer level that was already available. And then when we dive into the clinical viewer itself, many of you have verbalized use case need around the ability to group data within a component. Within medications, an example might be by medication name. Within documents, it might be by encounter type. Across list components, we have added a feature for grouping that allows you at a customer to configure which data items you would allow your end users to group by, as well as to define whether you want that default expanded collapsed, as well as what options you want available to end users to manually select at the point of access to change that. So an end user, a physician in an office, can actually go in and say, hey, I'm looking for just the inpatient encounters, or I'm looking for just information from this facility, and be able to group that data in a way that is meaningful and be able to access that and pinpoint the answer to the question at hand much more quickly. We have provided you a starter set of configurations that we believe meet the majority of use cases that you have brought to us. But we also enable you as a customer to configure that so that you are able to say, we want to actually add certain data types for that, reconfigure to different defaults, or change whether it's expanded, collapsed, or if you actually start with that master list. All of that is within your hands to do. And we didn't stop at grouping. We actually also added date range filtering within this, so at an end user level, in that same write flyout setting overlay, end users now have the ability to say, I want the information from a specific date range, a month, a year, whatever that may be, in order to more quickly pinpoint the information that they're looking for. Many of you have provided feedback around the search feature that we offered a number of releases ago to ask for expanded capabilities there. So you will see new capability within search to actually search across hidden columns, which at an end user value-based level provides an end user the ability to type in something like discharge and actually get back as a result the discharge summaries that may not have been labeled as such. To be able to drill down into documents or diagnostic study results to say, hey, I'm just looking for something that mentions mediastinum or something like that, and it will actually pull from that data and find that information within the component. In addition, we've made a number of other layout changes. We actually spent time with a few dozen clinicians getting specific feedback across all of our screens to say, what can we do better? And within that, we pulled back and aggregated all of their responses to say we want to make sure we do things like update our date definitions. Those date definitions are now standardized, streamlined across the product. We've streamlined sort options. We've reduced data redundancy, reducing the number of child screens that may be available, pulling that up to the parent screens so that that information is more readily accessible. All of that information together has been documented. So be sure and look at our documentation to understand some of the changes that are coming. Look at the release notes so that you're aware of some of those changes. This overall goal with both these features and the layout changes are to provide you out of the box a default viewer that meets your needs, reducing the need for customization, standardizing your approach, and giving you the tools needed in the event you need to change something small. So where does that stand when we think about the viewer today? It's a secure offering with SSO and OAuth. It's seamless, streamlining those login applications, making those things configurable for you and your organization, and increasing the value. Adding all of those features that we have heard from feedback sessions with you to say these are the use cases that are most important to us and this is the way that we want to approach them, and putting those as configuration options so that you can adjust if needed in a seamless way. And where are we headed when we think about what's coming next in the clinical viewer? We are continuing to think about ease of use, providing that continued out-of-the-box standardized offering, making it configurable where it's needed, and having that seamless experience across not just the viewer, but HealthShare overall. And what that looks like is thinking about a HealthShare-wide patient banner, patient search application, and then thinking about CV-targeted use cases for things like graphing and version compatibility. So when I mention patient search and banner, those of you who are familiar with our products know that those are very clinical viewer specific at the moment. There are a number of versions from legacy issues, offerings, etc. So what we're moving towards is a standardized banner, standardized patient search application across the HealthShare space that meets your customization needs and has that responsive design that continues to be accessible and work easily across all mobile devices. And as part of that work, we have heard that consent messaging and information to end users to say what data restrictions are being applied to my search and what data restrictions do I have the permissions to override, that messaging could use improvement. And so we've spent significant time thinking about what that looks like, what those should say, and how that workflow will fit more seamlessly within that experience. And so you will see changes coming related to that. And then when we jump into the clinical viewer itself, we know that we continue to hear requests for interactive displays around graphing. So you will see in upcoming releases vital sign graphing changes that allow for an interactive experience by end users to do things like say, I really am just focused on blood pressure readings, or I actually want to look at blood pressure and heart rate together, or I want to pull in even more and trend it over time in a different way. So that is coming to you when we think about the future. In addition, a number of releases ago, many of you are familiar with the fact that the HealthShare Unified Care Record kits and the HealthShare Clinical Viewer kits were separated out. And we continue to work towards cross-version support in the 21.2 release. Those are still required to be in sync, but as we think about the future, we look at doing cross-version support there. We have heard from many of you that you would like to be able to upgrade your clinical viewer without upgrading UCR, and so we're looking at all of those options. And as we think about that, and as I know I referenced just a little bit ago, the classic viewer has met many of the needs of you historically, and we're all moving towards the new clinical viewer. So when we think about the classic viewer that was not responsive and offered things when we really thought about the world as a desktop experience from a clinical viewer perspective, and moving to that responsive, mobile-enabled design, all of these features are available in the new clinical viewer, and we continue to encourage all of you to migrate over. That is where you will get that unified experience. That is where you get the grouping, the date range filtering, the expanded search, etc. We want to make sure that those features are available to everyone, whether they're working from a phone, a tablet, or a desktop itself. And we are committed to you and your success in that migration. If you run into issues, we always encourage the WRC and of course the product team as available for support. And that is what I have to cover for the clinical viewer today. Here is my contact information. If there are any questions around the information that I've provided, feel free to reach out, and I'm always happy to hear from you.